Okay, good morning. We are going to take a look at what I'm going to call today step 1.5. Now, it's the first time you've heard me talk about step 1.5, but here's what it is. There's a transition, as you've probably already seen, between step 1, pre-listing questionnaire, to the delivery of the pre-listing package. All right. So, pre-listing questionnaire every single time, again, takes discipline. We don't want an average presentation. We want a great presentation, right? So what we're going to look at is step 1.5, because at the conclusion of the pre-listing questionnaire, we're going to end with that dialogue, right? And here's the dialogue. Mark, now I'm going to guess if you and Kelly are anything like most folks in America today, you probably have more things to do in the week than you have time to do them. Does that apply to you and Kelly? Simply ask them that question. Now I'm going to ask you that question. Do you have more things to do generally in the week than you have time to do them? I think we can 99% of America will say, oh boy, do I, right? So what we want to do is we want to reconcile that we're going to give them something to do with the fact that they're busy. But this is a huge, right? It's a huge decision. And if they miss this step, if they don't take the time, invest the time in helping them make the absolute best decision, listing with you, Coldwell banker, right? They're doing themselves a disservice. So I need to reconcile, though, the fact that America's busy, and I'm going to give you one more thing to do. But it's critically, critically important. And your words, that's what you need to say. You need to tell them it's critically, critically important to you making a great decision. Okay? They'll understand it. So here's what I'm going to say to them once again. So Mark, I'm going to guess if you and Kelly are like most people in America today, you probably have more things to do in the week than you have time to do them. Does that apply to you and Kelly? Mark is going to 9.9 times out of 10 say, oh boy, does it ever, something along that line, right? So then you're going to simply say this. Well, with that in mind, the last thing I want to do is add one more thing to your already busy plate, right? I.e., I don't want to be a problem in your life is really what you're telling Mark here. But it's so critically important that you review this package of information prior to our appointment, all right? So the question then becomes, what's in this package? What's this magic that's in this package? Well, you hear the crazy president run around saying this, Coldwell Banker is the greatest real estate company that's ever existed. I don't say it because it sounds good. I say it because what I've seen now in approaching my 20th year in the business, I believe it's the truth. I believe it's the truth based on everything that I look at, whether I look at marketing, whether I look at relocation, legal, networking, IT, technology, you name it, we got it, folks. That's reality. That's not just the rantings of a madman. That is reality, right? And by the way, if somebody can show you something different, I'd love to sit in a conference room and have them show me, because I've invited people, no one's been able to do it. That's the conviction you take on a listing presentation. You work for the best, right? That's just it. So what goes in this package? Let me ask you all a question. Marketing. You heard me say in one of the earlier segments that we're going to break this into 3 sections. You can pick your own words here, but in my brain, here's how it worked for me, and I was able to articulate. Marketing. I wanted to show them that we could get them maximum market exposure, right? Merchandising. Transaction management / negotiation. Would you agree that a professional real estate agent ought to have a fundamental understanding of the transaction? Yes. Do you think the real estate agent ought to know the real estate purchase contract? Believe it or not, that's part of your strategy, is actually knowing the forms, knowing the transaction. That is a value to the consumer. That's a huge value to the consumer. And don't take it lightly, folks, because at Coldwell Banker, as you know, we put a high amount of importance on the fact that we actually know the transaction. We actually know the disclosure process, right? So on and so forth. And then also, how do you structure an offer? What's the first thing that you do when an offer comes in on a property? Do you run out and say, hey, seller, sign it? Or do you sit back? Do you run a net sheet? Do you review the offer? Do you come up with a sheet that says, here's some items that I would consider? Here's different ways we might want to consider countering. Again, part of a negotiation strategy is just that, having a strategy. The seller will get it. You're going to be talking a different language that they're going to like. This person has a strategy? A real estate agent has a strategy? That's a big deal. Don't underestimate it. So there's kind of, in my brain, 3 parts. If you want to have 4 parts, fine. Just have the dialogue that matches. So what I'm going to say simply is, Mark, the package is broken down in the following fashion, right? And again, you heard me say in one of the previous videos that part of my goal is after they review the marketing portion, if you were to ask them this question, the question is, after reviewing the information on the marketing section, are you convinced that Coldwell Banker can provide an unmatched level of marketing exposure for your property? If you've done the job and you've sold what we have at the company, they're going to come to one conclusion, and the answer is going to be yes, right? And if you talk to Michael Simcock, Michael's now a star, if you talk to Michael Simcock down in the Elk Grove office, several years ago, he used that dialogue for the very first time in the real world on listing and land par. And he did all the steps that we're talking about, and when he simply asked at the kitchen table, at the presentation, are you convinced that Coldwell Banker can provide an unmatched level of marketing exposure? They said yes. You know how much marketing he had to cover that night? Call Michael and ask him, but he'll tell you this, it was a round number, 0, right? They were sold, they were convinced. And by the way, he listed that property at 6% in arguably the hottest real estate market in history. And the property sold with multiple offers because he had a strategy, right? Don't forget that story. It's a big one, right? So let's just talk today about the marketing portion. Question some of you have heard me ask in presentations is this: is the internet a big deal? The answer is yes. But the real question is this: why is it yes? We now know this. 90% nearly of all buyers begin their search where? On the internet. So here's the question. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, would it make sense for you to list with a company that actually has a plan and a strategy and can really knock it out of the park in that arena? Would it make sense? I think we'd agree. We're logical. Yeah, it makes sense. So we just need to answer that question. Now here's the biggie though. Of that 90%, 35% of the buyers who went there actually found the home. So is it a big deal? It is absolutely a big deal. But the reality of it is, it's a bigger deal than we thought it was. So here's the question, and this is where you got to go to our good friend, myrecafe.com, because if you don't do that, you're missing the boat. Because we have piece after piece that talks about the strategy, why we do what we do, right, in the internet realm, to give them maximum market exposure for the property. That's really what it's all about. You ask any seller, are you interested in getting maximum market exposure for your home? That's kind of, in my world, one of those duh questions, right? They would have to be not very bright to say, no, I don't want that, Kris. No, they're going to say, yeah, we want that. Then just show them what we do. Now, here's a beautiful thing. Every month in marketing briefs, right, you get a lot of great stuff from our marketing department, but there's a little nugget of gold in that thing. And it's called, in my world, it's called the proof. The proof. You know, I'm a country kid. I'm a show me, don't tell me kind of guy. That's just me, right? So you can tell me all this great stuff about your websites and blah, blah, blah. But here's the real question. Do they actually get there? And I want to be able to show them the proof. So every month you get web statistics that show how many people have gone to CaliforniaMoves.com, ColdwellBanker.com, all these different things that we do where we spend lots and lots and lots of money, right? We can actually show them it's working, right? So if you ever have a question about, gee, do we have the right strategy? Just look at the web stats and you'll sell yourself. Here's the proof. Now, we're not talking about a few hundred hits and visits. We're not talking about a few thousand even. Really what we're talking about, depending on which way you look at, we're looking at hundreds of thousands, in some case millions, all right? Now, I don't know where you're from, but where I come from, Wilton, California, when we start talking about 6 and 7 digits, those are big numbers, right? So let's not undersell what's there. I'm never going to oversell, but if it's big, folks, I'm going to tell them it's big, and then more importantly, I'm going to show them. So what you're going to do is this. You're going to go to myrecafe.com. You're going to go to the marketing section, and you're going to go into the web strategy. If you can't find it, ask your manager. If your manager can't find it, tell him to call me. No, don't have him call me. Call Carol. Call somebody. But the stuff is there, folks. You're going to get more and more of it in the field, but it's there. Google, Trulia, Yahoo. It goes on and on and on. It's all there. So what you're going to do in your pre-listing package is simply this. You're going to overload your marketing section with what we know is a big deal. It's called the internet. It's a big deal. 90% of all buyers begin their search where? On the internet. 35% of the buyers who buy their property that begin their search online, they found it on the internet. It's a big deal. Folks, your pre-listing package, which is step 2 in the process, marketing's huge. The internet is a huge part of that marketing. All right. So upcoming, we'll take you through a little tour of My Area Cafe, show you where some of these pieces are, but you have some homework. You need to go in, you need to start looking. You need to look at showcase listings on Realtor.com. You need to know that your minimum standard should be 25 photos. You need to know that we have enhanced descriptions that feed automatically, that our competition either doesn't do or they don't have available to them. Whatever the case may be, if you go point by point, case by case, you're going to win the battle. You're going to win the battle. And if you keep winning the battles, guess what? You're going to win the war. If you want to have a great 2011, if you want to have a great real estate career, have a great listing presentation. Discipline is the bridge between being average and being great. Step 2, pre-listing package every single time. With that, have a great afternoon, and we'll be back soon.